All right. Let's find the right way today. Thank you, Lionel Richie and the Commodores. Hello, everybody out there. Gosh, thank you so much for so many of you joining us today. I think we've got a great presentation and I'm excited to get started. I know a lot of you, some of you I don't. So for those of you I don't, hello, John Miller, founding and senior attorney at Rock Solid Law and Title. We do three things. We close real estate professionally and on time. We represent entrepreneurial business owners. I love small business owners and the great energy they bring to our economy. And we represent families through estate planning. So today we're going to wrap two of those areas together and talk about estate planning and how that relates with real estate. And particularly, one part of estate planning is the probate process. So we hope to give you a broad education on the three areas today. And we are so pleased to have with us on the panel today our dear friend and outstanding human being and professional. Carolyn, would you please introduce yourself to our friends out there?
Yes, thank you so much. Pleasure to be here with everyone. Good morning. My name is Carolyn Castillo. I am a real estate agent. I've been a realtor for about 23 years. The last several years, I've dedicated my business to serving families that are going through probate. So, as you mentioned, through real estate, probate is when somebody passes away. The family then is inheriting the property, and our company is helping them get through that process as stress-free and smooth as possible. So I'm excited to be here with you guys today and kind of share what that process looks like and how we can all make it better.
We're so grateful to have you here, and it's going to offer a really great insight. My name is Victoria Duke. For those of you that don't know me, I think it says I'm John Miller, which is a great honor for me to be on the screen. But
I've
my
never
name
looked so good or been so smart.
My name is Victoria Duke. I'm an attorney here at Rock Solid Law and Title, and I work with John. And I'm going to explain a little bit of the probate process, more so as it relates to our real estate from the legal side of things. And then it's going to be awesome to have Carolyn here to basically tell you her side from the real estate and in the nitty gritty on that side. So
And
there's
it's
a
my
lot.
job to interrupt whenever I want to, which I'll try not to do too often. But I want to let those of you that hadn't been with us before know that right about here at the bottom is a chat bar. If you have a question, type it in there. If it's burning for the moment, we'll try to jump over to it, but likely we'll leave a little time at the end to answer those questions. Thank you, Victoria, for letting me interject that thought, which I forgot to say at the beginning.
Always, not a problem. So as Carolyn mentioned a little bit before, the probate process is how we get a deceased person's assets to their beneficiaries. And I'm going to focus a lot on the real estate here to give you kind of an understanding of what that looks like. And the reason that we're going to talk about estate planning and why we hear a lot of estate planning and, oh, let's avoid probate is exactly what we're going to tell you now is the actual process of how dealing with our real estate and probate actually happens. So, when a deceased person passes away and we have this home that we need to deal with, and we need to go to probate because this home was titled in their name alone, we first have to get a personal representative appointed. And some of you may think, oh, I have a will, I've written in there, I want my daughter to be personal representative. Easy peasy, right? There they go, they're personal representative. Not quite. We actually have to open up a formal case in court in front of a judge. We have to sit there and petition and ask for this person to be personal representative. The other people that are involved, all the other beneficiaries, have to agree to it or possibly fight it and say they want to be personal representative. So that's our first hurdle is we actually have to get a personal representative appointed to have a person that can actually sign off and deal with the home that we have. Once we have that first hurdle crossed, now we actually have to deal with what we call the creditor period. And so this creditor period is a 90-day period in which the attorney and the personal representative on the estate case have to fight and pay off all of the creditors of the deceased person. And so the A real stickler of this creditor period, and Carolyn will tell you, is that everything is on standstill during this time frame. We cannot sell a home. We cannot give a home over to beneficiaries. We can't do anything during this time frame. So we are on hold for a minimum after the personal representative has been appointed, on hold for a minimum of this 90-day period before we can really start doing things with our real estate assets, with our home. So during this time frame, who's paying the mortgage? Who's paying the property taxes? Who's paying the pool guy to come upkeep the pool? Who's paying the lawn? Who's paying the JEA bill? All of this stuff is a big, huge burden, usually on beneficiaries, possibly on one that has enough money to be paid back eventually from the estate, or sometimes in a real position where people just simply don't have that money. And sometimes in that 90-day period, we start moving towards foreclosure on those mortgages. So it's a very stressful time that really our hands are tied and we can't do anything. Moving past that creditor period, once we're over, we might think, okay, we're in the clear, right? We get to sell the home, easy peasy. We'll get rid of it, not so much. So there are two different things that have to happen depending on whether we're going the homestead route or if we're selling the home. If we want to sell the home, not only do all the beneficiaries have to agree on the sale price, on everything that's happening, but I actually have to have a judge sign off and give me an order stating, yes, go ahead, you can sell that property. So again, we're dealing with another hurdle just to get this property sold, be able to stop having to dish out these expenses for the mortgage, the JEA bill, you name it. I mentioned homestead a couple seconds before. That's a different proceeding dealing with the home. Depending on the facts of the case, that might be a direction that you want to go. But what homestead does is it immediately divides the property out of the estate and to the beneficiaries who are entitled to it by law. So now we're still dealing with who's paying the mortgage, who's paying the property taxes, who's paying the lawn guy, who's paying the pool maintenance, but all four beneficiaries own the home. And we're kind of at a standstill because now four beneficiaries are trying to list it, get it sold. A lot of hurdles to jump through. So that is usually what we talk about in the process of, we need to have a good estate plan, which John will get into a little bit later. And it's to avoid that process and avoid all of those hurdles. I'll pass it over a little bit to Carolyn so that she can talk to you a little bit more of that nitty gritty from the beneficiaries and personal representative standpoint of dealing with a lifetime of content in the home and just some of these real life stories that she's had to endure with trying to help people through this process where most of the time our hands are just tied.
Thank you. Yeah, you said it perfectly, Victoria. And that's the perfect commercial for an estate plan. Because who on heaven's earth wants to go through that? And when I first got my first probate case, I was like, holy moly, this is a lot, And for me, it invigorated me. It gave me passion, to help solve a problem. And we're a part of a networking group, John and I and Victoria, and our purpose in our group is to make awareness of these issues. But as much as we advocate for estate plans, we live in a world where there'll still be crisis. And so there will still be probate, there will still be people that don't get the estate plan. And that's where I come in, right? So I'm your girl that you call in when these things are happening. And so what we've done is really built a process around probate. And you're stuck in these time restricted. So think about a regular real estate sale, right? So me and you want to sell our houses today. We're gonna stage it. It's gonna be beautiful. We're gonna light the candles, the realtors coming over. This is gonna be amazing, right? Well, when you inherit a house, nobody's planning on selling that property. So right before somebody passes away, that's the furthest thing from anyone's mind is selling the house. Sometimes we never know when that bus is coming for us, right? So it can be a sudden death. I've been sitting at tables where, a mom went to the hospital just because she had a stomach pain. Mom never came back home. I'm sitting at a kitchen table with a 19-year-old and a 20-year-old son, and everything's there. Dishes in the sink, laundry's in the dryer, mom never came back, right? So it's a completely different sales process. It's a completely different experience. And one of the things is that you don't have the free reign to just do what you want, and that's what adds this constraint to it. Personally, myself, I've never been a personal representative, okay, for an estate in my family. I've represented, been with hundreds of families that I've assisted personal representatives. But what I found is that people only become a personal representative maybe once or twice a lifetime. It's very rare that you're like this regular personal representative. So if you only do something once or twice a lifetime, how well versed can you be at it, right? You really have to make sure you're with the right law firm, you're with the right real estate professional that really understands, the intricacies, the timelines, all of those things. So the good news is that it all can be done in a very smooth and stress-free way. But realistically, when you're inheriting a property, it may sound like, like, oh, cha-ching. I know we don't like to think about that after somebody passes away. But at the end of the day, your inheritance is a legacy for your family, right? And so people that I find that go through probate, 9 times out of 10, they always own a property. Okay. And so a lot of times the only thing we're probating is the house. And so this asset that the decedent had, we want to maximize it, right? We want to get as much money possible for this family. Well, you talked about it perfectly, Victoria. It's not just one person in most cases. To this date, I'm so happy. I just got the authorization to sell yesterday. 23 beneficiaries. Okay. So it was a family of seven children. Four of them were deceased. So those four got split down to all their grandkids. Okay. So imagine you inheriting your property. Some families don't talk. Some families are not close. And there's nothing wrong with that. Brothers, sisters, we go our own ways, right? But when you have to come to the table, it's not just attending a funeral. And anybody can attend a funeral, right? We can be there for a couple hours, show our respects, see our family members. But now you're talking about doing business transactions together. You're talking about doing business decisions together, okay? And not all families have those communication skills, right? So what we have found to work best is in some families we become kind of like the median, right? Where we are the similar like you and John, you're the lawyer, everybody kind of centers from you guys, right? And you're kind of the third party in the experience. So that's what we have found to be very successful in families that are going through probate. Brother, you tell big brother and tells little brother to do something, you don't always get the best response, okay? But we come up with a process for the family, and I'll kind of take you through that real quick just so you could see kind of the most effective way to handle this, right? We're talking about all the problems, but I like to share the solutions. So the number one thing is that we've got to start working on the house. So as Victoria said, the number one thing is you got to open up a probate case, you've got to hire your attorney and get that ball rolling, because we can't do nothing without that, okay? While that process is going on, start preparing the house, okay? As we mentioned, this house is not prepared for sale. You've got a lifetime of contents in this home, okay? And we really work off a three-stage process, which is first let the family get all the personal belongings that they want, maybe keepsakes, pictures, things that are memorable to the family, right? The second part is doing an estate sale, because there's no way that everything inside of that house, all the beneficiaries need. We all have our own stuff. We all have our own houses, right? And then the third part would be removing whatever is left behind. Now, this house hasn't been prepared for sale, right? So if you were going to sell your house, if I was going to sell my house, I would be like, oh, I got to fix that, creaky door. I got to fix that window. Well, there's nobody there to do that now. So what we recommend is then having a handyman go in and taking a look around the house and seeing what are some odds and ends that we can just address and take the edge off. We typically don't recommend the family investing money into the house. I've seen a lot of families do that, and it doesn't normally go a very good direction. It's better. My approach is clean and clear. Okay. And we just want to remove the edge. If there's something materially wrong with the house, we want to fix that, but just sell it as is. Okay. Now, when you go through that sales process, as you mentioned, the 90 days, right? So during that 90-day period, the creditors have to go through that whole process. Well, by the time you organize to get all the family to come and remove their personal stuff, then you organize to do the estate sale, then you organize the property prep, then you take the pictures, then you go on the market, then you find a contract, right? A lot of times where our timelines will end up right when Victoria will get the order determining homestead, or if we finish a little bit sooner, we may have to petition the court to authorize the sale of the property. But I can't stress enough, the same exact time that you start the probate, you should start working on the property. The property is actually a liability. Anything can happen to this house, okay? You, like she mentioned, you got to pay the bills, you got to pay all the utilities, you got to keep up with the grass. But let's be honest, if we all are homeowners here, everyone's had a broken air conditioning, everybody's had a backed up plumbing, right? Well, when you inherit a property, it's no different. This house is going to break down too. So the last thing that you want is then your air conditioning to break down on an inherited property, and now you guys have to come up with 10 grand to now fix an air conditioning. So it, as much as it's a blessing, it can also be a burden. But if you handle it properly, if you work with the right professionals, it can all be streamlined, it can be smooth, and we can sail off into the sunset, get your families, protect your family's legacy, and move on. And for me, in my experience, I find that the house is like the last piece of the person a lot of times, like the decedent, and their families will hold on to this because it's like they're holding on to the person. But then sometimes it just goes, the longer you hold an inherited house, it deteriorates. So once you liquidate it, we get it sold, now you get your inheritance, and now your legacy and your family can live on. So there's my 2 cents, guys.
That was perfect. Victoria, what did that make you think of?
Well, honestly, there's a lot of things that we can do to kind of cut out, or not necessarily cut out Carolyn, because her process, whether you inherit the home through probate or you inherit it through another form of estate planning, what Carolyn and her team do is something that is really above and beyond, I think, that a lot of other agencies probably don't do. And that's with really helping deal with not only the grieving process, but dealing with, I wasn't prepared to sell this home. This isn't even my home. What do we do with all this stuff? And really kind of knowing that process, which is really, really helpful. But that made me think of different avenues that we can kind of cut out the court process to make things a little bit seamless during that transition.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And one thing that Carolyn said that rang true with me is that most people only serve once as a personal representative. We call it a personal representative, or PR, in Florida. You may have heard the term executor or executrix, which is the same job. It's just a different title from other states. And when she said that, my immediate thought on the inside was, yeah, because nobody ever wants to do it twice, right? So a lot of times people who have to serve as personal representative and have to be the one who has to make all those uncomfortable calls to their siblings or the other heirs never wants to do it again. And that's when they come to us and say, hey, what do I have to do so my family doesn't have to go through what my parents just inadvertently put us through, right? So I thought that was probably an accurate observation, but also a multi-layered one, because of the fact that incredibly rarely somebody will say to me, yeah, we went through probate and it was easy. those are usually what I call the Florida palm tree family tree, which is the parents at the top and one kid below, right? So things will sail through because there's nobody to contest or argue. But in most circumstances that we see, um, there's somebody that's not happy with what mom and dad did. And that's not what mom told me. So, hey, there's already a probate lawsuit filed. All I've got to do is get myself a lawyer and file some motions in there and let my grievances from when the kids were teenagers be heard in court, which will slow the whole process down. So that leads me to what we here at Rock Solid Law consider one of our quests, or at least I do. I don't know if everybody else would call it a quest, but I do. And that's one of the reasons we have that sword in the stone. One of the things I say is we help every family pull their own personal sword out of their being stuck in the stone. And how can we do that? We can do some planning ahead so that there doesn't have to be a protracted probate. How can you do that? Well, every family's different. I think we had the hypothetical earlier of there really being only one main asset in a probate, and that would be a homestead or other piece of real property. That can absolutely be true. Could we have kept that property out of the probate process? Yes, we could have with a little advanced planning. Does it have to be through a trust? No. Can it be through a trust? Yes. Are there other strategies? Sure. Enhanced life estate deed, nicknamed a ladybird deed, can keep us out of probate. I had a funny one the other day. I was consulting with someone and they said, can I leave 13 people as the remainder man on the deed? And I said, no. I said, legally, yes, you can. But that's what you get when you probate and end up with all of those heirs being on the deed. What's wrong with 13 people on a deed? One of them can hold the other 12 up if they're all owners. So if it's the palm tree family I talked about, and there's one heir, shoot, that's easy to do with the remainder man. That's the term used under the law of the person who gets it after the living person has died. Or it can go in a trust if you have all those 13 people, but you put somebody in charge as your successor trustee so that you have a point person making the decisions, and then they will make the decisions and distribute the money according to the trust after the sale. So you don't want to have 13 people in charge. You really don't even want to have 4 in charge because people have different ideas on what's appropriate. How do we get to that point? We sit down and talk. We don't know what your situation is, but if you tell us what you own, how it's held, we may be able to move those assets around so we avoid a protracted probate, make Carolyn's job a lot easier, which is called trust administration, right? Or if it's a ladybird deed, we know exactly who's in charge from the date of the death and don't have to go let a judge take 6 months, a year. What's your longest one, Victoria?
Oh, longest one. Longest one can be anywhere between almost 5 years, 3 to 4 to 5 years. The more average is 1 to 2 years for completion, but those ones where people just can't seem to agree on things.
And nobody is happy carrying those costs during those 2 to 5 to 7 years, right? Somebody's going to have to be paying a mortgage if there is one, utilities to keep the place up because you can't let the electric get cut off. Or you're going to have mold issues and all sorts of other things here in Florida. So there's so much to think about that could totally be avoided. And I'm going to get on my legacy soapbox for a second. Unfortunately, if you don't plan, that bad thing that happens, that 7-year probate, that gnarly fight between your heirs, that becomes your legacy. Where if you took care of it on the front end and everything was easy, you've shown the people you love most how much you care about them. And that becomes your legacy. Wow, mom and dad really took care of us. And now they're left to grieve and celebrate you and not fight over you. So how does that happen? For being here and spending this time with us today, Victoria or I will do a consultation and we'll waive the fee. That's almost a $500 savings to you just to talk about what your situation is, right? And there are families that do not need to have a trust. Okay. It depends on the family situation, the wealth, the manner in which assets are held, and how we can plan to keep you out of probate. We talked about the time expended in probate, but probate's not cheap either, guys. Probate is more expensive than even doing a trust plan, which is more expensive than doing a last will with a ladybird or enhanced life estate plan. So really, it's most people want to pass their assets, as much of them as possible, to who they want, when they want, and that can be done through this proper planning. So our offer to you is just let our team know that that you attended, and therefore we'll be glad to waive the fee. Now, I'm not seeing any questions, which means Carolyn and Victoria were a model of clarity this morning and have taught you everything you want to know. If there is a question that's really fact-centric and maybe you don't want it out there on the internet or on the video that somebody can come watch later, feel free to send it to us at questions. That's a plural word with an S on the end of the word question, questions@rocksolidlaw.com. And we'll get that answer out to you, or come in for a consultation, better yet, no charge, and we will answer it live. I want to add, and Carolyn mentioned that we are in a network group together of people that try to help families at the end of life and through these transitions. And in fact, I'm excited, Carolyn, because it's today that we're going to we're going to do the panel for the membership, and then we're going to offer this panel to come out into the community and speak to people. So I just thought it might be a good idea to say to those of you that are here, if you have a group that you think that it would be helpful for us to come and bring that panel to, let us know. We'd love to do that. Starting in 2026, we're going to be doing that. Carolyn knows better than I do, but I think on a fairly regular basis, as often as we're asked, because one of the reasons you get on this monthly webinar is, we love to share education. And that panel is going to share a broad range of education that I'm unaware of anywhere else you can get. Hey, guys, we got a question. Up, the glasses go on. What if there's a child from a previous marriage petitioned as PR, but there's a surviving spouse? Victoria Duke.
That's a great question. So this kind of runs into a little bit what I mentioned before. We have to get that personal representative appointed first. And sometimes people think, well, I have a will and I've appointed, my daughter to be personal representative, but there are still hoops. And let's also talk about the fact of, if you don't have a will, so therefore you haven't said who you want to be personal representative, the law has these layers as to who has priority over who to serve in that position. So a child from a previous marriage could absolutely petition to be personal representative, and usually then a surviving spouse is going to petition as well and either agree or fight as to why they should have the position if that's what they want. So like I said, that's a big part of that first hurdle that a lot of people, I don't think about, that we have to get that person appointed first. And if we don't have a will direction, at least at minimum, we have a lot of different people with certain levels of priority fighting over who gets to be in that role.
And ultimately, it'll be decided by a judge.
Yes.
So wouldn't you rather make that decision yourself, perhaps through a trust where you've appointed the person in charge, your successor trustee, and the trust never gets published? Last will and testaments have to be filed with the court, right? That what is the content of your trust is your private information, only to be shared with a choice few. So it's a good way of not suggesting anybody on this call would have any skeletons in their closet, but most families have things they don't want shared, laundry they don't want aired. How about that? We'll get rid of the skeletons and make it the dirty laundry. And we can keep that information from getting floated out to the general public. Thanks. That was a great question. As almost every month, we've exceeded the 30 minutes, but I want to give each of you, Carolyn and Victoria, a chance to make a little little close, something else that you think might be a benefit to those that took their time to join us today.
I'll go first and I'll let Carolyn wrap it up there. I would like to say that we do some great things here at Rock Solid, not only helping you prevent probate, but also helping you through that probate process as well. And so I would say if you do end up in a situation, or you do know of someone that's ended up in this situation because they didn't get pre-planning done, also come talk to us about that, because we do love to help make that transition as seamless as possible and help our clients as best as they possibly can through that. So not only will we help you avoid all those hurdles, we will also help you or your friends or people that you know through them if they do end up in that situation.
Absolutely.
Awesome. And thank you guys so much for being here. I appreciate it. And like John mentioned, we would love to invite you for our pre-planning events that we're going to be hosting in 2026. Just exactly what John said is once a personal representative, never again one. And that's literally every professional in our group has stated, when does somebody go pre-plan for their funeral? It's not something you think about. Oh, let me go get a pre-plan for my funeral. Nobody wants to think about that. But when do they do it? After they've been through a funeral, they see what all the kids had to go through to put together the funeral, and then they're running to set up their funeral so their family doesn't have to do it. So we would love to invite you guys, get some education, learn about the options. And likewise, if you know of a family that's recently inherited a property, either through probate or trust, we offer free consultations to help the families understand what their options are with the real estate. There are options that you can assume a mortgage on an inherited property if the family wants to keep it, if the family wants to rent it, if they want to sell it, cash offer options, listing on market options. We consult with the families, kind of give them all the education, all the information they need to make the best decision possible. So thank you guys so much for having me.
Fantastic. No, we really, really appreciate your time today. Hey, you guys out there, I hope you learned something today. Again, if you have any questions at Rock Solid Law, or give us a call. I'm going to turn you back over to Lionel Richie and the Commodores to get your day grooving. We'll see you next month. Carolyn, we'll see you at lunch.
Gonna get your dance on.
Chair dancing.
Victoria, don't leave us hanging.
No, I know. I'm sorry. I'll groove a little bit.
We need you on the dance floor.
I know.
Are we good?
All right. Looks like most folks have dropped off. Zoom through your day. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.